Itt van az éj, eltűnt minden fényforrás.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Big thank you for your patience and your lovely messages saying Sunday is not Sunday without an episode of the show. Very much appreciated. So I'm back, as you can see, in the kitchen, and I'll probably be in the kitchen for at least another, well, I would imagine 4 weeks. I'll pretty much finish doing my bit in the study, so it's a case of just waiting for the bookcases to be built and installed, and carpets and putting everything back together. It's simple as that, really, isn't it? But anyway, so yes, we'll be here in the kitchen for a few weeks until we get to that point. So yes, I thought I'll come back with a bit of a bang, and well, certainly quantity. I've got 7 samples here in front of me, so it's going to be, I'll keep the waffle to a minimum, and hopefully we'll keep this episode of the show to under 40 minutes. So basically, I've been doing this job now for what, 20 odd years, 25 years? Well, we'll be in February anyway. And certainly nowadays, independent bottling companies, you look at the list, you see the same old. It's, you know, Craigalackie, Blair Athol, Ben Rins, Dal Ewan, and you know, okay, yeah, right, okay, you finished that in so-and-so wine cask or what have you, but you know, there is a certain element of, lack of excitement, it has to be said. Not with these guys. So this is an independent bottling company called the Heart Cut, founded in September of 2023 by Fabrizio Leone and his wife Georgie Bell, who kindly sent me some samples and really got my interest straight away when I saw the 2 samples that they'd sent me, and then looked at the remaining bottlings that they had released, and well, to say interesting and different, let's put it this way: no Blair Athol, no Craigalackie, no Dal Ewan, just some really unusual stuff, some stuff I've never seen bottled by an independent, some stuff that I've only ever seen bottled by the likes of boutique whiskey and what have you. So yes, basically, sort of Fabrizio and Georgie, I believe, have been involved in the whisky industry for a number of years, and obviously it got to this point where they'd built up the contacts, and that's pretty much all you really need, apart from a large pot of cash, to set yourself up as an independent bottling company. And they must have some bloody good contacts, because you know, these distilleries such as Westland and is it Westland or Westward, I believe, in America, Cotswolds, and so on and so forth, certainly don't just sell their casks for any Tom, Dick and Harry. I mean, I have no contacts with Cotswold. You know, I know of them, but I mean, unlikely I'd be able to phone them up and say, sell me a cask. So hats off to the pair of them for, you know, coming up with a really intriguing selection of whiskies. Obviously, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, as they say, or the juice in the bottle. So I'm going to, like I said, because I've got 7 samples here and I want to keep this to under 40 minutes, I'm going to keep the waffle to a minimum, and just to introduce the lineup. Right, okay, so first bottling of the day is distillery I've never actually heard of, called so this is the East London Liquor Company. This is a 3-year-old rye whiskey made from a mash bill of 55% malted rye and 45% barley, distilled in December 2019, bottled in February of 2023. Okay, bottling number 2 is an American single malt from Westward in Portland, Oregon. Again, distillery I can't say I'm aware of. This is 5 years old, bottled at 50%. The previous bottling, the East London Liquor Company, is bottled at 49.9. So distilled in March of 2018, bottled in August of 2023. Next sample is the Cotswolds. So this is a 5-year-old bottled at 54.3%, aged in New American Oak, distilled in January of 2018, bottled in October of 2023. Next sample, number 4, is Milk and Honey, 4-year-old, bottled at 57%. This is a single pomegranate wine cask. As you may well remember, I did an episode of the show on the Apex bottlings from Milk and Honey, and so the distillery bottle a pomegranate wine matured version. So this is 57%, it's 4 years old, distilled in February of 2019, bottled in March of 2023. Interesting enough, apparently it was aged at their sort of Tel Aviv warehouses since February 2019 up until July 2022, and then it was moved to the Dead Sea area and their warehouses there, so that could be quite interesting. Next bottling, and we're almost running out of glasses as I have to recycle and run through to the end last two. This is a 7-year-old rye whiskey from Few Spirits, bottled at 50%. It's been aged in New American Oak with 3 years finishing in Exeterns cask, so quite intriguing. Distilled in June of 2016, bottled in May of 2023. Penultimate bottling is a Stauning. I told you, they do some, I mean, talk about unusual lineup. Really, really interesting. I'm so looking forward to sharing these with you. So this is a 5-year-old Stauning. It's made from heather smoked barley. It's a single malt. 52% has been bottled out, aged in American Oak with 7 months finishing in ex-Madeira casks. And the final bottle sample of the afternoon is a 4-year-old Kyro. This is made from 100% malted rye, aged in New American Oak, distilled in September of 2018, bottled in February of 2023, and bottled at 50%. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to this. So let's quickly kick off with the East London Liquor Company. What I failed to mention was that this has been matured in ex-Hackney Brewery chocolate stout casks, which apparently have held the stout for 10 months. So rye and stout, nice combination. So let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? That's got lovely intensity. It's young, straw-like, plenty of sweet rye. It's got that obvious stouty character, that chocolatey stout is coming through really, really nicely. A little bit of ginger, a little bit of vanilla. It's young, but it's not fainty. I mean, it's only 3 years old, for goodness sake, and I would have expected this to be reeking of faints, but no, it's youthful, like I said, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I really, really like this. I love the chocolatiness of it. Right, let's see what that's like. Juicy, rich, big, lots of slightly herbal rye. Again, plenty of chocolate stout notes, straw, minerals. Nice balance from the acidity, keeping it clean. It is a bit youthful on the finish. The finish is medium length, I would say, and there is a little bit of rose petally mar coming through, but again, there's no faints. It's really clean, it's young, it's exuberant. Interesting, lovely, lovely rye whiskey. Really like that. Great starter, I think. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Westward American Single Malt. So this is 5 years old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Quite oaky. It's a little bit on the raw side, where the previous bottling was youthful. I didn't get any faintiness. I'm not really getting faints, but I'm getting kind of raw spirit, I suppose. touch of malt, some warm vanilla, toast, marzipan. I mean, it's a nice nose, but there's that rawness there. And I would just have said, I would have left this a little bit longer. I mean, how old was it? 5? Yeah. I think sort of a couple of years more would have been ideal, just to take that edge off. I mean, it's not an unpleasant raw spirit note, but it does jar just a little bit, to be honest. Let's sort of pass right. Again, full, oaky, quite coconutty, nutty coconut, plenty of vanilla, lots of new American oak. Again, the spirit is just a little bit underdeveloped. It's a little bit raw, it's a little bit hot, the finish is a little bit hot. It's pleasantly spiced, it has to be said. There's a touch of maltiness. But I'm not really getting a lot of idea of what the spirit is about because it's all so young and I'm getting predominantly oak character. It's pleasant, it's a lovely mouthful. I think this would develop quite interestingly, although I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. Obviously there'll be some development from the spirit, but yeah, it doesn't quite sort of excite me as much as the previous bottling, but still, you know, a really interesting and, you know, good quality whiskey. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Cotswolds. So this is a 5-year-old aged in new American oak. Now you can smell that's new American oak. Lots of vanilla, lots of toastiness, but it's got a lovely freshness to it as well. Where the previous bottling was all very soft and very vanillaed and what have you, this has got a kind of an edge to it, a citric sort of minerally sort of edge. I mean, it does help that it's 54.3%, it has to be said, so that alcohol is kind of enhancing the citrus and keeping that freshness. Malt, a little bit of white chocolate, barley. It's got a lovely freshness. I really like this. Touch of almost kind of stewed tea coming through on with a bit of thyme here. Let's see what that's like. Again, quite a lot of oak vanilla, and just a little bit tight, it's a little bit tannic. There's some lovely barley notes, some juicy fruit, apricot, lovely intensity, minerals. That, like I said, it is a little bit masked, the alcohol is masking, but it's kind of aiding the citric note, it's aiding the freshness, and stopping the sort of the new oak becoming sort of OTT and too vanilled. And too toasty. Let's put a little drop of water with that and see what that does to it. Oh yes, now this is absolutely gorgeous. It's just knocked the oak back a bit and I'm getting loads of tangerine, apricot, orange, really juicy, really citric, some barley. Wonderfully fresh, aromatic, beautiful whiskey, it has to be said. A little bit of almost kind of banana, almost kind of like that sort of estery, banana-y white fruit. That's impressive for 5 years of age, it has to be said. So pass right now. Generous, juicy, fruity, citric again, orange, tangerine, lime, a little bit of lemon, barley. Oak has just really fallen back into the sort of mid palate and really only starts to encroach on the mid palate and on the finish. And it's not bittering. There's some lovely vanilla. It's soft. It's not quite so tannic. Yeah, it's really juicy, it's really impressive. Just a bloody good whiskey. Right, okay, so let's move on to the next bottling. So bottling number 4, this is the Milk and Honey Pomegranate Wine Cask, 4-year-old, bottled at the not inconsiderable ABV of 57%. Right, let's see what the nose gives us on this one, shall we? Young. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Milk and Honey Pomegranate Wine Cask, 4 years old, bottled at the not inconsiderable ABV of 57%. Ooh, let's see what the nose gives us on this one, shall we? It reminds me very much of the distillery bottling, which I suppose is a good thing because there's a continuity. It's not like they've sold off this cask because it went a bit weird. It is pretty much pomegranate wine. It's winey, it's big, it's oaky. I'm not getting any distillery character, but then I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I know what Milk and Honey is all about, and you know, it's a bit like sort of not Cotswold, a bit like Cavalan and lakes. You kind of, you know what you're going to get before you've even stuck your nose in the glass. Sometimes you are pleasantly surprised. There's a little bit of a saltiness, there's a nip there, there's a little bit of that sort of note that reminds me of the Dead Sea bottling, but it's a big wine monster at the end of the day, and it doesn't kind of float my boat. It's a bit too one-dimensional. Let's see what the power's like. Tannic, a little bitter, it has to be said. The alcohol is kind of emphasising that tanning. Again, quite winey, pomegranate, a little bit of spice, a little bit of salt. Again, we're not talking major complexity here. We're talking pretty much all about the pomegranate wine cask. And, you know, there's a sweetness there, which is kind of offsetting that sort of bitterness. I mean, it's well made, it's nicely balanced, it's good quality. It's just not, for me, particularly exciting, it has to be said. Let's put a little drop of water with it and see what that does to it. Well, that's made it even more perfumed. I mean, that's made it more pomegranate wine, if that's indeed possible. It really is kind of like red fruits and pomegranates and sort of not a great deal of anything else. It has to be said. Let's see what that's like. Okay, I will say I'm getting a little bit of barley now, and there's a little bit of vanilla possibly, but again, it's dry, very tannic, winey. If you like that kind of thing, then brilliant. It's your kind of cup of tea. For me, it just lacks some light and shade. It's all a bit too obvious, even though that kind of, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day. It is it's perfectly Milk and Honey, and if you love Milk and Honey, you're going to love that. If you're not a big fan, you're not going to love it, if you see what I mean. Okay, so let's move on to the Fuse Spirits. So this is a 7-year-old rye that has been finished for 3 years on Exeterns casks. Let's see what the nose gives on this one, shall we? Oh, mother, I like that. Oh my God. The biggest issue I have with Fuse Spirits, like a number of these sort of young, well, it's not even a young American distillery anymore, is it? It's been around for quite a while. But young, they released it when it was about 3 years old, and they kind of kept the spirit at its kind of that kind of point. It's like a lot of the European distilleries, and it just never really appealed to me. It was always too fainty and too raw. Oh, this is stunning. It really is that kind of that Sauternes character is giving it loads of dark honey. It's even kind of giving it a feeling of maturity. There's a lovely sawdusty sort of American oak, sweet rye. Oh, it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Late harvested fruit, spice, toast. I mean, I mean, this is probably the best bottling of fused spirits that I have ever tasted. And that, I mean, I wouldn't say I've tasted an inordinate amount of fused spirits releases, because, like, it's these sort of there's certain distilleries that, yeah, I know what they're going to be like, and I just don't seek them out. It's just, there's no point, you know. I know, you know. I mean, it's a bit of a crass thing to say that I know what it's going to be like, or I kind of have an inkling as to what it's going to be like. And then suddenly you get something like this, and it's a complete about turn, and it's kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, you know. Now, I don't know whether Heart Cut did the finishing, possibly they did, but I tell you what, whoever decided to finish this in Sauternes has, oh, that stroke of genius, absolute genius. This is, it's just stunning. It is stunning, it really is. And let's taste it. Sometimes whiskies can go a bit pear-shaped, and there's a disconnect between the nose and the palate. Right here, oh mother, this is good. Beautifully balanced. Lots and lots of honey to kick off with. To get loads of that late harvested Sauternes character to kick off with, and then in comes the spicy rye. That's like herbal rye, dark rye bread. A little bit of bitterness on the finish, but that's okay, because the sweetness of the Sauternes is kind of offsetting that bitterness. It's got a lovely length. It's intense. It's deep. I mean, like I said, this is probably the best bottling of fused spirits that I have ever tasted. Wow, bloody amazing. Okay, so just sort of moved a couple of glasses down to, because I just don't have enough. So this is the 5-year-old Stauning, heather smoked barley, 7 months finishing in ex-Madeira casks. Okay, so there's plenty of smoke. Yeah, lots of heather. It's kind of right, okay, so moving on, this is the 5-year-old Stauning, heather smoked barley malt. Let's see what the nose gives on this end, shall we? Quite a bit of oak, I'm guessing new American oak, possibly. The Madeira is fairly subtle, it has to be said. There's a little biscuitiness. The spirit is a little raw, it's a little young. I mean, it is 5 years old, and Stauning, you know, it's another one of those distilleries which kind of dabbles in that kind of bottling at too young of age. I mean, they've recently released a entry-level bottling, and it really is incredibly young and hard work. I wouldn't quite go as far as saying this is hard work. I think, I'm going to sort of court a bit of controversy here, but I think that basically the Madeira finishing is kind of so we can kind of bottle this now, and I probably wouldn't have done so. It's not masked the slight sort of rawness of the spirit enough. I mean, it's pleasantly toasty, but it's just that kind of like, you know, we're kind of coming back to the same as that American one, the Westward. No, I keep saying Westward. Westward. Sorry. Again, it's just too young. It's just not really had enough time to evolve. There's a little bit of almost kind of tarriness coming out now. Yes, that smokiness, which is almost kind of peat notes, is kind of detracting a little bit from the youthfulness of the spirit, but again, you kind of look beyond all of that. You know, yes, if you stick your nose in it and you kind of instantaneously get these kind of characteristics, and then you kind of, some people probably won't look beyond that, but I kind of dissect a little bit too much, I suppose, but then that's my job, that's what I do. And it's interesting, yeah, but it's just kind of, given the price tag, anyway, let's see what the pass like. Fainty, edgy, but those kind of faints are wrapped up in that kind of like heathery, almost kind of peat smoke kind of character, and you don't really kind of notice them. It's got a youthfulness, there's not much of a finish to it, it's a bit short. Coal dust, lovely coal dust finish, actually, it has to be said, or aftertaste. It's just not quite got the complexity. It's interesting, and again, I think for me personally, I would have just left this a little bit longer. I think this has probably been bottled too soon. Yeah, it just isn't quite there yet. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Kyro. Now, what did I just say a few minutes ago about sort of knowing distilleries and what they do and not seeking them out? And yeah, Kyro just falls into that. It's one of those distilleries I wish I loved. I love the story, the history of Kyro, but I just don't get their whiskey. Their whiskey is always bottled too young. It's kind of like, you know, that classic sort of Germanic, European sort of fetish for sort of stuff that's just so young. It's kind of, you know, yeah, I know Kyro is not Germanic, but you know, it's that kind of style. Anyway, preconceptions aside, like I said, with the few spirits released, you know, it could be a complete sort of, well, I wouldn't say curveball, but it might be, no. It's not, it's kind of, as I would expect Kyro, fainty, potpourri, herbal potpourri, more faints. It's not quite cardboardy, but you know, we're millimetres away from that, and it's kind of, no, this is not doing it for me whatsoever. It's so young, and it's kind of, what is it, 4 years old? I mean, you know, I'm sure Fabio and Georgie just absolutely love this, but for me, it's just, no, this should have been sort of left for at least another 4 years, if not more. There's nothing there apart from the fainty spirit character. There's a little bit of a creaminess there, yes, but damn, this was bloody hard work. Anyway, let's see what pass on. Raw, fainty, short. Now, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of you guys that love Kyro. Loads of people love it. And this is why this has been bottled. For obvious reasons. It's not been bottled to kind of appease people like me that think, oh God, this is too young. There's loads of people out there that love it and will buy it. And, you know, certainly I remember at the last year's Nottingham Whisky Festival, a lot of people were coming up to me saying that, you know, that they thought the Kyro bottlings were probably some of the most impressive they'd ever come across. And who am I to argue with that? This is the thing about whiskey. Whiskey is not for sort of like individuals. You know, it's everybody has their own take on it. Everybody has their own likes and dislikes. And at the end of the day, if we all liked exactly the same thing, life would be really, really boring. Now, for me, it's just not my thing. Not my thing at all. It's too young, and but you know, for others, you may well really love it. So there you go. Okay, so So let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to Fabio and Georgia for the samples for today's episode of the show. Very generous. I am going to have to address a slight elephant in the room, and no, I'm not talking about Byron. I mean, he's not an elephant, obviously. Price. Now, I haven't mentioned price, but these are not cheap whiskies, and it's kind of exacerbated by the fact that they're bottled in 50cl bottles, and I didn't actually physically realise that until I took delivery of the ones that I really liked, and I thought, why the hell is this box so bloody light? Opened it up, and 50cl bottles, and they are extremely expensive. They really are, but some of them are stunning, absolutely stunning. Now, I really love the East London Liquor Company bottling. Yes, it was young, but it just goes to show that sometimes young can be, really intriguing, really interesting. It's got its plus points. It's got the youthfulness, but it didn't have the faintiness. It didn't have the rawness. And unfortunately, the Westward unfortunately fell into that category. It was too young, too raw, and this is the thing, you have to kind of praise everything on its own merits. You can't just basically sort of say, yeah, okay, that one worked at 4 years of age, this distillery is going to work at 4 years. It doesn't work like that, and for me, that one should have been bottled, or should have been left in the cask for a little while longer. The Cotswolds, put a little drop of water with that, and that's just absolutely mind-blowing. Again, this is horribly expensive, I know, and sort of people will probably take a sharp intake of breath and say, how much for a 5-year-old whiskey? But, credit where credit's due. The spirit is just unbelievably good. And like I said, put a little drop of water with it, knock back the oak a little bit, and wow, absolutely stunning. The milk and honey, well, it is what it is at the end of the day. It's kind of like, it's pretty much identical to the distillery bottling, which in essence is good for sort of continuity in the fact that, like I said, they haven't hived off a crap cask. But for me, just not enough complexity or interest at all. The Fused Spirits was probably the one that just blew me away, because I was kind of in that mindset. I know what Fused Spirits are like. I know it's all going to be young and sort of fainty and sort of, and then that happened, and it was just like, oh my God, that is stunning. That really is absolutely stunning, and just sort of shows that you should not have preconceived ideas. But then you come to the Stauning, and the Stauning just kind of backs up everything I know about Stauning. It is so, I wouldn't say hit and miss, but there's some bottlings that they do that are really good and really intriguing, and others that are just too young and too fainty and just too sort of like, no, I don't really want that. And unfortunately, the same can be said for the Kyro. It just falls into the same category of being bottled far too young. And I know there are people that like that, and that's why it's been bottled, but for me, it's just not particularly interesting. But anyway, on the whole, I have to say, stunning range, really intriguing, really unusual. Wasn't expecting this from an independent bottling company, and it's no surprise that I think the Whisky Magazine Icons of Whisky Awards, these guys were independent bottler of the year last year, and you can see why. If they're going to keep up this sort of intriguing sort of interesting distilleries that they're bottling, then, well, certainly worth checking out. Yes, they're expensive, but some of them are just damn good. So anyway, all that's left to say is it's lovely to be back. It's lovely to be back in the kind of the natural order of things, even though I'm kind of consigned here to the kitchen. But anyway, that's the what do they say, sort of like necessity and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it doesn't really matter where I am as long as I'm reviewing good whiskey. So until next week, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good dramming.
látok, nem más, csak